is finally here. The start of the United Soccer Coaches Convention live from the Philadelphia Convention Center. And I am so excited for this week. A lot of great guests lined up for you guys. A lot of guests that were lining up the day of. It's going to be a fantastic week for us. It's going to be a fantastic week for you guys, the listeners, as we have multiple people you guys know lined up for the podcast. But somebody that you guys do not know, somebody that is appearing on the podcast for their very first time. He's a guy who I got the pleasure of meeting this season in the press box. And I would say he's the guy who does the other half of whatever Matt Ralph doesn't do for the brotherly game. He is Greg Oldfield. Greg, welcome on the podcast.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's exciting to be around fellow media personalities.
Absolutely. It's so cool. Talking to some people when I first came in here, I'm like, it's awesome seeing all these soccer people with their club jerseys, some MLS stuff I've seen. You have European guys. I mean, this is where you want to be if you're into soccer. And it's great to see it be in Philadelphia this year.
Yeah, it's a fantastic event. It's been a while since I've been here, but it is unique in that, you can go into different rooms with college coaches, club level coaches, and then all of a sudden there's a superstar leading a coaching session, and it's very rare.
For sure. And like you guys have already heard once, Billy Myers, who runs Growing Up Union, is here with me. You guys heard him talk a little bit about our best Union players ever, our best 11. Billy, how are you enjoying the convention?
Yeah, it's pretty cool so far. This is my first time here. I know it's been in Philadelphia before, but first time attending, and yeah, it's cool. Especially this podcast row is really cool that they invited a bunch of podcasters to come out, because podcasting gets overlooked sometimes in media, but I think it's becoming more prevalent. So it's cool to be here, and it's cool to be invited to be here.
For sure, and especially in Philadelphia, where we always complain, the radio stations don't talk about the Union enough. And, well, the one thing we have plenty of Union podcasts that do give the Union their well-deserved coverage. But, Greg, like I said, you work with the Brotherly Game. Can you let our listeners know a little bit what you do exactly with the Brotherly Game?
I mainly do writing. I do game coverage, but I kind of focus on a lot more of the features, the player interviews. I have a deep passion for the history of soccer and the game, and trying to just remind people that it started before 2010. So that's kind of my main interest. I'm usually tweeting a lot during games lately, arguing with Union fans, and just trying to do what I can to just raise the exposure of the game, make sure that a lot of the soccer fans of my age, my era, just remember that there's U.S. soccer going on, and it's not all overseas.
It is. I know. It's so crazy. I mean, slowly but surely, soccer is growing in this country. I mean, we all saw the World Cup numbers. Everybody loves European soccer. They all love the World Cup. But it's like, you have soccer in your backyard, and that's what my last two episodes were about, just non-league soccer. I'm like, you have local soccer in your backyard. Why aren't you supporting that? And so, I mean, it's great to have somebody like you that's giving it that attention. It's like, we need more people like you, Greg, that are like, hey, look, you got soccer in your backyard. But when did you get started with Brotherly Game?
I started writing for Brotherly Game in 2020. The pandemic year was a little bit different from my full-time job. I'm a full-time teacher. So during that time, I was teaching from home. I had all this free time, and I've always been a writer. I've been writing for about 15 years, fiction, nonfiction, and I hadn't really dug into my soccer roots. And the first story I wrote for them was a story in 1990 when UGH played the U.S. national team 2 weeks before the World Cup. And that was, I knew a lot of the players who had played in that game, and just fascinated that the national team would play a local amateur team 2 weeks before going to Italy. And that was sort of a long journey digging into the past, the local clubs. Just Werner Fricker at the time was president of U.S. Soccer. Just his story is phenomenal. And that really got the ball rolling. And then after that, I kind of started going to some of the games during the pandemic because nobody could go to the games except media, which was great. And from there, it's just kind of taken off. I just can't get enough of it.
Well, I did not know that, so I'm glad I asked. I mean, like I said, I mean, you and Matt Ralph, and for people that are wondering, yes, Matt Ralph is here. He's just not live with us. He's over at his booth. And that's why I love Matt and I think that's why you guys are such a great fit is because, yeah, Matt covers the Union, but he gives so much attention to local soccer. And I'm not surprised to see you two hit it off with your first story, just local soccer back in the 90s, writing about it for the Brotherly Game. And that's why I love Matt and that website is just because, yeah, they talk about the Union. Yeah, they talk about the academy, the second team. But Matt also does stories with soccer in the local area. And we need more people like that, especially here in Philadelphia. But let's go ahead and switch over to the 2022 season. Being in the press box, I mean, there was a lot of great home games that we got to witness this year. Just what are your thoughts on the season?
Last season was unreal. I mean, it was kind of hard. How are they going to follow up that Eastern Conference final? Tragedy really is what that was. And you knew they had the team. You knew that they were good enough, but how were they going to respond to that? And they responded as well as anybody could have imagined, and even better. The offensive output, some of those games, just the high-scoring games, were just things we've never seen before from a Union team. And there was, a long stretch of the season where they were easily in first place. Nobody was beating them, and people were still complaining that they weren't good enough. And that was pretty, it was interesting because that's the expectation now. We have a team that can win an MLS Cup, and that's what the fans demand. And it's kind of really cool to see. It's cool to follow along.
It is. I mean, I think a couple of years ago, and Billy, I mean, as a fan, you probably wondered, I mean, you've been around since 2010, seeing us blow out teams 4-0, 5-0. Like, I'm sure that was a little bit of a surprise to you.
Yeah, I mean, there were some early games back in the day where we had really convincing wins, but for it to happen consistently, like it wasn't just a fluke, it wasn't just a bad day on the other team's part. That was what our team was designed to do was to score and to keep scoring and to not let up. And so for it to happen more than once, I mean, we had 3-7-0 games.
I mean, there's a ton of stats. It was so hard to keep track of all the records we were breaking.
We broke all of the records.
Yeah, pretty much. And the only thing that we could have done even better is to win MLS Cup. And I guess that goes into the next question is, would you call the 2022 season a success? I've asked a couple people this on the podcast before. Even though we didn't win MLS Cup, are you still proud of the fact that the Union had a successful 2022 season?
I thought definitely it was a successful season. I mean, they were 3 minutes away from winning the MLS Cup, which is as hard as it was to swallow. It was a fantastic moment, and they were there. And I think to me, what I take away from the 2022 season is that they played their game consistently throughout the season, and whether people enjoy it or not. But that's a style of play, and they were consistent with it, and they kept most of the same players on the field healthy, and that just doesn't happen a whole lot. So I felt like it was a special treat. The records and all that stuff was fantastic, but they were playing their style game, and they were successful at it. And I don't know how much more you're going to ask of a team to do that. Winning a championship, there's too many factors that come in. I mean, they were unlucky at the end. I mean, they got beat by a guy who's now retired and just a phenomenal legend, trophy, Champions League winning player. And he came on 10 minutes in extra time with, everyone's gassed. And here's this guy, he's basically like a superhuman in extra time. And that's how they got beat. And I don't know if you can call that season a failure because of that. I don't even think you can call that game a failure because of that. It's just, it happens in the sport, and that's what we love about it. But absolutely thrilled for the season that they had.
Yeah, I mean, you look, I mean, I love Frank Leist, and not enough fans know about him or give him credit. And we saw 2 of the goals that the Union scored in that game were off of set pieces. And it shows you just those fine details, how much set pieces matter. And to see the Union come back twice in that game off of set pieces. And I know they gave up a couple set pieces in that game as well. But, I think more teams, not maybe just in MLS, but in the world, are like, hey, look, set piece coaches do matter because the Union went out, and Jim Curtin always says that, one of our key pillars is innovation, and that's a credit to Jay Sugarman. And they go out, they get a set piece coach in Frank Leist a couple seasons ago. They bring in the throw-in coach from Liverpool. You saw the Union's throw-ins result in maybe not goals, but the chances this season. And so To see the Union, yes, score off of set pieces in the final, even though they gave up goals off of set pieces, I think, this season was fantastic. Billy, I know I haven't asked you, but would you say the 2022 season was a success?
Yeah, I don't think you can call it anything other than a success. I mean, at the beginning of the season, everyone was saying we have to make MLS Cup, and we made MLS Cup. So um, obviously, we wanted the game to end differently, and you can argue about certain tactics or certain substitutions, perhaps during the game that maybe weren't ideal, but we did what we set out to do, and that was to prove that we were the best team in the league, and certainly the best team in the East, and it's 100% a success.
No questions asked about the East. I mean, we all know what happened in 2021 with COVID, and the Union get a shot at it again. And yeah, they go down against New York City. And the thing I like about that is that the Union didn't give up. Just like we saw in LA, they give up the first goal and they come right back, score 3 goals against New York City in the Eastern Conference Final after, only beating Cincinnati 1-0. You're going to have games where you're not blowing out teams all the time, but to see the Union play consistently throughout the season, I mean, that's all we can ask for as fans. Now, you were in LA, right, Greg, for the final?
Yeah, I was. It was an incredible environment to be in somebody else's stadium, but it was super loud. Like even the people next to me, I couldn't even have a conversation with the people next to me in the press box. It was just an incredible environment. But to see them perform at that stage and to be in an MLS Cup, that was my first MLS Cup that I attended, and just you could feel just the energy, and I haven't felt that sort of energy except for being over in Europe for a European game, and just an incredible environment. Credit to the LA fans and just the stadium and everything they did, but the Union fans traveled well. They were strong, they were loud, just as loud when they were scoring, and it's just that's kind of the environment you want to be in. You just want to be in that environment where fans are going back and forth and just being loud and crazy, and it's something I'll never forget. I still have chills just thinking about it.
Yeah, me too.
It was a long time ago.
I mean, it's a game I say all the time. I can't go back and rewatch it and everything, but maybe I can watch up until Jack Elliott scores. Don't need to see Gareth Bale scoring to tie it up, but yeah, I agree. I've been saying that with all my guests that 2022 was a success, and like I said, Billy, I mean, you guys in the early days, if we would have told you at the beginning that, okay, look, the Union are going to blow out teams in 2022. They're not going to spend big on players. It's going to be a team. They're going to reach MLS Cup with what they have against a team that has endless amounts of DPs, it seems like, and money. I think you guys would sign up for that 100%. But we go ahead and look towards 2023, where the Union haven't made a ton of moves. The only player that they brought in is Andres Pereira from Orlando City. Any concerns that the Union haven't been that active yet, Greg?
I like the Pereira move. I remember watching him play in Orlando when I was down in Orlando a couple of years ago, and Orlando beat the Union 2-1, and I think it was 2019, I want to say. And I thought he was the best player on the field at that game. So I'm happy with that.
Us, right?
Yeah.
I think 2 of his 3 goals in league history are against the Union.
Yeah, I was happy with that pickup. I would like to see an attacking option because I feel like that's the one area where they need to get better at off the bench. Attacking player off the bench. I mean, obviously the big 3 are going to do big 3 things, which I'm excited about now. They're all starting together from preseason, which I think is going to be great for them. But they still need somebody coming off the bench. They need an influence maker. They need a decision maker. And if the one thing that I think they didn't have last year, when we saw it in the final, was that person that was going to come off the bench and change a game. And they still, I don't believe, have that player on their roster.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, in 2019, it was Elsinho. In 2020, it was Anthony Fontana. 2021, Corey Burke. 2022, Corey Burke. And it's unfortunate that he gets injured in the game against LAFC. I think, maybe if Corey Burke didn't get hurt and you had to bring in Chris Donovan, maybe Jim would have switched to 5 in the back to shut it out, and maybe the Union would have won MLS Cup. I mean, there's so many what ifs. For you, Billy, looking ahead of the 2023 season, any concerns of the lack of depth we have?
No, I'm not concerned because Ernst is the kind of guy that he doesn't show his hand too much. So even though we haven't made a lot of moves, that doesn't mean that he's not active. He's not looking. He's not talking to people, So I think when preseason ends and we're ready for our first game, there will be already players, I think, on the move to come to Philadelphia. So I'm definitely not concerned, but I agree with Greg. It's definitely we need a difference maker off the bench again because right now that's the one place that we are lacking.
Yeah, I mean, you look at LAFC bringing in Gareth Bale and some of the other options they brought off the bench. I mean, of course, we all know the Union aren't going to go out here and spend millions of dollars for players like that, which is fine, because you don't want to disrupt what you already built. And there is no superstar on this team. The team is the superstar, as I always like to say. And I'm fine with that. I think fans are fine with that. I think, maybe a couple years ago, we're upset, complaining, oh, the Union don't spend enough money. But when they do spend the money, they are buying the right players, it seems like. Yeah, maybe there's a couple misses here by Ernst Tanner, but for the most part, every single player that he's brought in for the Union has made a difference. And I think the 2023 season with 55 games potentially for the Union, yeah, we definitely have to get some more players in here. But I want to go ahead and just, before we wrap this up, Greg, any trips planned this year for media? Maybe you're going to go there to actually enjoy the game and not cover it for the Union this season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, probably Miami jumps out at you, but that's like spring break, and I don't know if I'm into the Miami spring break scene at the moment. I'm dying to go to Montreal. I've never been to Montreal, but I don't know if I want to go there in March. So we were talking about San Jose in June, which probably that could be a good one for us to go away. And last year I made the trek to New York, made the trek to New England, DC. We caught a good game in DC last year. So I do want to continue to do some of those trips that are drivable. But as far as the long distance ones, probably San Jose, maybe Montreal, long drive.
Yeah, didn't we play Montreal like in March last year too, and was indoor? I mean, and we won too last year.
We also played the first game at home too.
Terrible turf. So maybe it happens again this season, but. Yeah, I love traveling to away games and just taking in different MLS stadiums. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful MLS stadiums that a lot of the stadiums I've only seen pictures of or on TV and everything. But hopefully as the years keep going on, I'll get more and more chances to see these stadiums. Anything else you're looking forward to in 2023? Maybe it's not just the Union. You're looking forward to U.S. Open Cup, Premier League, Brendan Aronson with Leeds United. I mean...
I am looking forward to. I think the Open Cup will be interesting this year because I feel like they sort of bagged that one last year. It came at a bad time. They had a big string of games at that moment. I feel like that will be interesting how they manage the U.S. Open Cup this year. I feel like they'll put a stronger squad out. Hopefully,
I hope.
And this Leagues Cup will be interesting. Because I'm not a big fan of the Leagues Cup. When it came out, I thought it was a terrible idea to pause your season in the middle and just have another competition that really doesn't matter a whole lot. It's going to be great for TV. It's going to be, a great environment wherever they play. But I always felt like the Champions League and the MLS Cup would still be a priority. So it'd be interesting how those two competitions come into play.
Well, you guys all know the Brotherly Game. You guys know where to follow them on Twitter at Brotherly Game. Obviously, the name right there, Brotherly Game. You'll find their website. Greg, you personally, where can people find you on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter at Greg Oldfield 21. I also have a website, www.gregoldfield.com. You can find some of the links to my writing there too.
Absolutely. Greg, like I said, meeting you this past season is a joy. Great soccer mind. Need more people like you covering the beautiful game. And look forward to many more high-scoring games, hopefully at home and on the road this season with you, Greg.
Yes, thanks a lot. I appreciate it, guys.
Thanks. I hope you guys enjoy that interview with Greg Oldfield. He is one of my favorite people that is covering the Philadelphia Union. Be sure you're supporting his work at gregoldfield.com, like he said. Be sure you check out his work with the Brotherly Game. That guy does it all. He's fantastic, and I'm so grateful that I met Greg this season in 2022. Well, I guess technically we're in 2023 now. But if you guys enjoy that interview, we're going to have a lot more interviews coming up. An interview that a lot of you OG Union fans, I think, are going to appreciate. A player that played on the 2011 Philadelphia Union team. We also, it finally happened, have Jim Curtin coming on to the podcast. We're going to go ahead and talk with Jim about some of the new players that they brought in, some of the players that they lost, how preseason's going, and what we can expect going forward, and even some silly questions at the end. But be sure you guys are following the podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Free Kick Pod, wherever you get your podcasts of The Free Kick. And guys, be sure you are sharing this podcast on social media. There is going to be so many interviews for you guys this week, and I really, really hope that you guys are enjoying the content that myself and Billy Myers are putting out there for you guys. We're doing it all for you guys, so just take 5 seconds out of your day and share the podcast. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is The Free Kick Podcast.